Hello everyone, welcome back to On The Fly. Today we're going to be taking a look at a trade between the LA Kings and the Minnesota Wild. So the LA Kings did receive Kevin Fiala's restricted free agent rights in exchange for Brock Faber and a 2022 first round pick, which is the 19th overall pick in this year's draft. So when we take a look at this trade, it is a very interesting trade. We have two teams in very similar positions, with the LA Kings and the Minnesota Wild both being knocked out in the first round this year. The Wild getting knocked out by the Blues in 6 games, and the Kings getting knocked out by the Oilers in 7. And when we take a look at this, it is an interesting move. We have Kevin Fiala, who did get a contract extension at $7.875 for 7 years. So a pretty big contract scale for and a top player at that, coming over to the LA Kings in exchange for a prospect in Brock Faber, who is looked decent in his time in the international competition at the Olympics. So it will be interesting to see, kind of follow along how he will end up doing in his career, and a 2022 first round selection. So the first round selection is a very deep draft for the Minnesota Wild, so do expect that pick to maybe even be flipped. I know the Wild are definitely looking at potential options. They are a contender. They still do view themselves as contenders. So whether or not that pick will be dished off still remains to be seen. At the end of the day, I think depends on who's looking and who's in the market. Don't be surprised to see that pick move. The Wild do expect themselves to be top-end contenders next year. So this pick doesn't necessarily mean a lot for them. So when we take a look at that, I'm looking especially for them to trade to a non-contending team for one of the better players. But of course, that still remains to be seen. And Brock Faber, decent prospect, nothing special. Also expect him to be moved at some point in exchange for probably a better player than Fiala, or at least a replacement for Fiala, who's going to come in at a little bit cheaper. The reason why they didn't just decide to keep Fiala is because they are at they're having cap problems right now, having roughly $6.5 million to spend, not going to be able to afford Fiala's big money haul from the LA Kings, and they don't want to have to get into that restricted free agent market where we have offer sheets and the whole bazinga. So that's why they sort of jumped the gun, got rid of the contract, got who they wanted in exchange for Kevin Fiala. And for the LA Kings, getting a player like Kevin Fiala is going to be quite huge for them, playing that top line role beside Kempe and Kopitar, going to be on that first line of the power play, going to be on the first line of the offense. So definitely do look to him if you are in the fantasy hockey market. Definitely a must-add for next year. Going to be a very underrated player, playing alongside the top line with Doughty as well on that power play. Definitely look forward to him. And the reason why they added Fiala, Alex Iafallo, wasn't necessarily what they were looking for from this year. Sort of got off to a rough start and couldn't really find it, getting injured pretty soon on. So Fiala is sort of his replacement, and the contract pretty hefty, but I think it is a good deal in the end. So with that, we'll give the trade grade. I'm going to give an A for the LA Kings, and I'm going to give an A- to the Minnesota Wild, mainly because I want to see what the Wild are going to end up to do, especially when it comes to the draft. I do expect them to make a major trade coming this year on the draft, mainly because they don't really need the pick. They don't need the prospects. They are going all out eventually, and right about now is the time to do it. You got most of your players in the prime of their career, and I do expect even maybe taking a shot at a guy like Marc-Andre Fleury in free agency, having that opening period to re-sign him, I think is definitely something the Minnesota Wild should look into. But with that, if you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching. If you'd like to drop a like, if you really like to, consider subscribing, tell all your friends, and leave a comment down below your thoughts on the trade. Until next time, see you.